going to have a number of fantastic brands join us for a panel discussion. And we're going to chat about blending the art of marketing this time with the science of IT and using that to drive CX innovation. And some of the topics that our fabulous panel are going to touch on will be bringing customer-centric vision to life, how becoming a strategic partner that drives efficiency, using actionable data to unlock revenue-driving personalization initiatives, something I know is near and dear to everybody here's heart. And how do you really build a CX optimized tech stack? I'm not sure we always think about our tech stacks from that perspective. So lots of thought-provoking questions there, I think. I will not be hosting this panel because I am delighted that we have a special guest who is going to do that for us. Alicia Esposito from Retail Touchpoints. She is the VP of Content and is responsible for orchestrating all of the content strategy and the tactical execution for this retail publication. So she knows both marketing and retail very well and is going to bring her own wealth of insights. And we've been very fortunate at Amarsis to actually partner with Retail Touchpoints over the last year to get a better understanding of latest industry trends and research. And I know Alicia is going to bring a lot of that to the table. So without further ado, I will pass things to Alicia to kick things off. Welcome, Alicia.
Sarah, thank you so much for the kind words and the warm welcome. Really excited to be here, especially driving this incredible panel of experts and practitioners who are essentially living and breathing this every day. And I know we only have 30 minutes and we have a lot to dig into. Some of the pillars and best practices we're going to be discussing today have a lot of meat to them. So to kick things off, I think it'll be really important for us to do a quick round robin of introductions, so to speak, because all of the folks on this panel do have different perspectives. They are part of different organizations, different categories, and ultimately different cultures, which I think will add a level of nuance and insight to this entire discussion. So panel, would love for you to kind of go in order of this slide to make things a little bit easier. Just introduce yourself and just share a sentence or two about your role, your priorities, and kind of how you're thinking about this idea of IT and marketing collaborating together. Christian, let's start with you.
Hey, Alicia, how are you? Thank you to the Amarsis team for having me. I'm Cristian Serrano. I'm leading all the e-commerce and direct-to-consumer business unit into Tekmovil. We are a technology distribution company, and basically I oversee all the operations in Americas region.
Awesome. Lynn?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me as well. I'm excited to be here. My name is Lynn Calhoun. I am head of marketing and e-commerce for Replacements Limited, where we are a direct-to-consumer company looking to help connect people and create memorable experience through creating beautiful tablescapes and ensuring that those folks collecting tableware have all their pieces at the right time, at the right place, so they can have their gatherings.
Beautiful, Lynn. Aaron, welcome. Introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here. So I'm Aaron Bradley. I'm the Global Vice President of Technology, Innovation and Experience at Wella Company. And we primarily focus on the professional beauty, hair, nails, and beauty tech. And my role within Wella Company is to look after and drive the digital experiences and technologies across the whole organization, from e-commerce solutions all the way through to our customer service and frontline sales tools.
Amazing. And finally, Jens, hello.
Hello there. Very nice to meet you all. So thank you very much for that. So I'm Jens Hard, based in the Nordics, working with global retailers, focusing on helping to connect customer data from offline to online, create the customer 360 model, and pair that with the right message to the right user at the right time. So creative and data in combination.
Amazing. So as you all can see, very different backgrounds, day-to-days, but I think some really nice synergies that are going to bring this conversation to a level of, insight, actionable takeaways, things that you guys can hopefully apply in all of your businesses. But I think that the key underlying theme or focus, I think Sarah kind of already touched on this, is now more than ever, marketing and IT really need to work synergistically in order to bring CX to its full potential. I think historically, I know we've seen it in our coverage on retail touchpoints, is that CX has always kind of been, pushed towards marketing. It's their mandate. They need to support, service, e-com, digital. But now, obviously, as things are getting more digitally connected, consumers are expecting more seamlessness, more personalization. IT does need to have a hand in bringing these strategies to life in order to, best not just orchestrate the channels and the tactics, but also, determine how impactful these efforts are. And we're going to be getting into a lot of this, but at a glance, these are the 4 pillars or 4 keys to success, for marketing and IT to collaborate. So we're going to be digging into all of these and getting some additional insights from our panelists. So let's start with really the foundation of it all, I think, which is this idea of customer centricity. It's definitely not a new concept. I know we've been covering it for quite a bit on retail touchpoints, brands that have been trying to make that shift, from brand centric or product centric to centering around the customer. And obviously companies are in different stages of that process. So Jens, I think I'm going to go to you first, because you work with so many different companies. You may have that nice high level look at as far as where companies are and ultimately what some of the challenges are, like as they're trying to make that shift. What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Alicia. So I fully agree to the points here. What I hear from many local, regional, and also global brands is many of them are moving from a product-centric view to a customer-centric view. So it really matches with your headline here, and I think there are some macro effects accelerating that as well, like the cookieless future that is partially here and will be fully here shortly. So a lot of companies is investing in customer data platforms and those type of things. And then when they start to have these type of enablers, they also start thinking about, okay, so what can we do with these tools and how should we adapt our ways of working, potentially change our operating model and so forth. So transforming the company culture is very just as important as building the right tech and so forth. So that will bring and accelerate the customer understanding. So yeah, I think that's my point of views right now.
No, it's great. And Lynn, I know in our first conversation, you spoke a lot about what that journey looks like for you. So I'd love for you to share your perspectives, because I know you did emphasize that it is very much a journey, right? So how are you thinking about things within your organization?
I think for replacements, we have always been, I feel like this is just very cliche, customer focused. I mean, customers are our North Star. They are the reason for us being. And our focus on them starts with, we retain a customer contact center where we take calls, we listen to the customers, we have a daily survey that goes out to our customers, we review that survey, we look at our CSAT scores, our net promoter scores, and more specifically the comments that we're receiving from customers. And we're aggregating that and looking to say, what action do we need to take on this information we're seeing? And we layer on that a desire to get in front of the customer and then ask them, how is that experience? What is it that we can do better? And we utilize tools on our website that allows us to intercept and ask those questions so we can collect real-time data. And so that is not how we feel, think, or want our customers to behave, but look at the data that shows here is their journey, these are the areas of friction, and what are they saying to us about them, and how can we look to improve it?
Christian, anything resonate with you there as far as accessing and leveraging that data to create that holistic view or centralized view of the customer?
Yeah, absolutely, Alicia. And I think we are all kind of experiencing the same. For example, for us, I think the biggest challenge has been to adapt all the processes. We were born as a B2B company. And in that shift in terms of business to consumer, it's been very, very complex to try to align all these cross-functional areas and make them understand to our peers why it's very, very important to have, seamless and frictionless journeys for the final consumer. So, the North Star, I think that for all of us, it's consumer, but also we have kind of a mantra that it's a strategy before technology. Technology has no limits, but if you don't define where you want to go, it's very, very complicated to get there. So basically, I think, again, the biggest challenge in us is change the DNA, adapt all the processes that were originally created, and ensure that we have a very, very frictionless process to the final consumer. Whether it is, I don't know, tax refund, return or exchange, or a normal purchase, right?
Yeah. Christian, I love that point that technology is essentially limitless. You need a guidepost, or you both brought up the phrase North Star, which I feel like I need to emphasize, because you do need that centralized point that you're always pointing towards, and that needs to be the customer. Before we move on to the next point, Aaron, I want to go to you, because I know in our first conversation, you brought up the shift to being more individual centric, which I think is a really interesting nuance. So can you expand upon what that means to you and your work, but also more broadly, your organization?
Yeah, of course. So Wella Company is quite lucky that we operate across B2B, B2B2C, and D2C. And we see a lot of fluidity across the customers and the interactions that we've got across consumers and more traditional customers. So we're making a shift from having a business entity in a database to understanding them as an individual, not just as a customer, but potentially also as consumers. And if we focus for a moment on the B2B aspect of what I look after at Wella, we work with a huge amount of salons. And a salon can be from an independent hairstylist all the way to a multi-location, huge chain of salons. But it's the people that we really focus on, and that relationship that we want to build for a lifetime relationship and loyalty with Wella Company.
I love that. And I'm sure there are a few folks in the audience right now that may have that more B to B to C or B to C to B, or however you want to shuffle the letters together, because these revenue models are getting a bit more complex and go across different platforms. So I think, again, getting it down to the individual level, understanding that nuance through data is really powerful. So let's go to the next point around strategic partnership, because again, Christian, I think this goes to your point. The technology is limitless, but you need a guidepost. Marketing needs to provide the data and the strategic insight rather to be that guidepost. So let's get into that a little bit. Jens, I want to get your perspective on that, how critical that alignment is, and ultimately what the long tail effect is in terms of revenue, productivity, performance, because I think it's easy for us to be like, oh yeah, like we collaborate, like we should collaborate, it's all great and dandy, but like what are the outcomes if a company does or does not achieve that alignment?
Yeah, so I think painting the North Star, as we talked about, is kind of crucial. To start there, to think about how would you like your customers to have the experience, and what use cases do you need to improve or build and stuff like that. And then going across silos will be also key to success, because there, as we also mentioned earlier, technology is immense. I mean, it opens up tremendous of opportunities, and then you can easily fall into rabbit holes when it comes to technology. And then you also have the business side who might have some specific perspectives of this. So bringing the IT side together with the business side is crucial to help define art of the possible and where to go, and then build the plan basically. So and I would also call out to invite the legal department, since stuff like GDPR and so forth. I've also met many times that there can be misperceptions and misunderstandings. So the earlier you can align and where you want to go and see the business values, that will help to set the direction for the project going ahead. So
no, that's a really good point. Yeah, I didn't think about the legal implications there, but I'm sure some marketers are like, oh yeah, that's true. Like how many times have we had a great idea and like legal has had to kind of reel it in a little bit, right? But I want to turn it to our practitioners on the line because I know you all have talked about how critical it is for marketing and IT to be aligned in the good fight, so to speak, aligned on a vision for a new initiative or a new approach, need to be aligned on how success is going to be measured and how it's going to ladder up to goals. This could probably lead to an hour-long conversation in and of itself, but how are you doing that? Especially because as we think about, I mean, the 2 days of this content, right? The art side and the science side, and sometimes the languages don't always mesh. Sometimes you're not always speaking the same language at all. So how are you getting teams on the same page and you know, rallying around a centralized vision? Aaron, do you have any perspectives and maybe like how measurement and measures for success specifically kind of tie into speaking that same language?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we tackle it is we focus on capabilities. So if I think of building an execution team based on capabilities across multiple different functions and leveraging the correct level of capabilities that all of the different areas can have into one single executionable team, then we can leverage, as Jens mentioned earlier, the knowledge of the legal team for data protection, the marketing brand experts, the IT experts as well. But it's really important that they have a single goal. And for us, we always make sure there's a measurable outcome on what we're spending our time and effort on. And typically that means that it needs to be commercially recognized within the business unit, the market or region or business function. So it's not about just building a technology solution and then handing it over. The delivery of the technology solution doesn't do anything. It's what the business impact that it enables it to have. So it's really important that combined team have that aligned business outcome and not just delivery dates for certain pieces of technology or even creative content.
That's great. Lynn, I saw you nodding your head as Aaron was going through his response. Anything you want to add there?
No, I appreciate what was said because I do think it's working towards a common vision. And if you think about the session before us, over communicating, right? So taking that time, spending that time together, talking through what that shared vision is, what that could potentially look like, and the why is what the customer is looking for. And the technology is the solution, right? How do we get them there, and the nuts and bolts of it, and then having those shared measures of success and understanding the goals and the outcomes of that. So I think that the collaboration, the over communication, the evangelizing your work and the data, just all gets reinforced through those relationships you build across functions to focus on your North Star, your customer, and their experience.
Great. Christian, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think we are on the same path. We are experiencing exactly the same. It sounds very, very simple, like collaboration and working together. But I think it absolutely makes sense. We are start to inviting the IT teams since the beginning of the projects at the brainstorm stage, because they can understand in that way the thought process behind any requirement. I don't know, just as an example, it's not the same to just send the IT team a request of creating, 1 million new customer profiles on the ERP, instead of explaining to them the importance of have a full profile of each of our consumers and the impact that this can have in terms of lifetime value, customer segmentation, and ROI per person, right? So sometimes during this discovery phase, they offer us better solutions in order to achieve the outcome that we are looking for. So I think it's very, very important to include the IT team since the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think knowing, almost the limitations of your own knowledge, right? I think in our coverage of, culture and what true collaboration looks like, it's like there's always that mention of like removal of the ego, right? Like there are certain things that you simply just like don't know within the confines of your own work. So bringing in true experts and trusting them, in this case, IT and marketing, and, being able to fill those gaps without, the bias of like, well, that's not like how I would think about it, but it definitely helps, get everyone on the same page. So the next topic, obviously, is with this alignment and the centralized vision is, making sure that both teams have the insight and the knowledge they need to do their jobs well. Obviously, data is what drives personalization. It's what drives best-in-class customer experiences. So, I'd love to open it up for whoever wants to share their perspectives first around, what your data strategy looks like, and most of all, how you ensure that this data is integrated, accessible, and most of all, actionable for everyone within your teams. Because I think that actionable piece is sometimes what's really missing from a lot of organizational strategies. Is there anyone that wants to jump in first?
I can.
Go for it. Yeah, I was calling someone next, so thank you.
So one of the big initiatives that I've been driving within Wella is a concept of Wella One, and what that means is that it's the consolidation from an operations perspective of connecting the data across all different experiences into one location. This allows us to build a lot stronger profile knowledge of those individuals, like I mentioned earlier, and therefore allows us to make sure that we're leveraging that data to build the best experiences. Now, the problem that you sort of touched on before is how do you make it actionable data? And what I've been lucky enough to be able to do is to build a capabilities team based on the data to help upskill and support the different functions around the business in how do you use that data to make better decisions, but how do you actually use that data to actually generate more revenue or business impact across the different functions as well. Because I think one of the problems that some companies have is we gather a lot of data, but what do we do with it? Are we mature enough to actually start executing on it? And do we measure the actual benefits associated with the actions that we've had? So having the technical operations there, having a single data infrastructure, and then having the capabilities around using it is the sort of the direction that I'm sort of driving at the moment.
That's amazing. And Christian, maybe one area that you can dig into a little bit, since I know we have to move the session along and we're almost out of time, is not just using data to inform the customer experience and what is being pushed out into the world, so to speak, but how is data being used to support business operations, marketing efficiency, marketing performance? I'm sure a lot of marketing teams on the line right now may be navigating their own pressures as far as validating their investments, validating any technologies they want to invest in. Can you share anything there, like as far as, how you're using, performance data and customer insight to make those improvements, make those refinements to workflows and how teams are working every day?
Absolutely, Alicia. I think some of the things that we have implemented, I think it's two main initiatives. The first one is regarding the use of the data. Sometimes we as organizations made the mistakes to set, let's say, sales as the objective, right? My personal opinion is that sales should be the consequence of the things that we do. It's not the objective. So, of course, we need to start to set a sales goal, a sales forecast. But again, achieving that number, it's a consequence of what we are doing. So basically, we are using the data to change the KPIs that we are measuring. So, for example, we are focusing on order cancellation rate, product return rate, the sold out due stock out. We are trying to enhance our CPFR process, lifetime value, increasing ROI and ROAS of any investment that we are doing, and repurchase. As an example, we've been able to jump from 5% of repurchase last year to 20% of repurchase during the first 6 months of this year. So among a few other KPIs, right? But it's enhancing the metrics that we are seeing as a consequence, better customer satisfaction. We are seeing an increase in terms of sales, a profitability in terms of spending less money or investing in a more intelligent way. And the other big initiative that we have is creating, and I think Jens bring that to the table a few moments ago, it's build this kind of little small SWAT teams, very, very agile teams that we call squads. And it's basically having one people of each of the areas, right? So we have legal, IT, finance, digital, marketing, operations, you name it, in order to ensure that in any initiative, in any project that we are doing, all the possible gaps are covered there. So I think that's what we are doing.
Amazing. I love that little actionable tidbit there. That could be something that our audience can test out within their own organization. We do have one final point to go through before we close things up, and that's the tech stack. Like Sarah said, this is an area that I think a lot of companies are focusing on more, again, because they need to validate their investments. So I want to close things out with Lynn and Jens for this one. So this whole idea of, developing a framework or a roadmap for future CX investments. And of course, innovation is always the goal, right? But of course, you need like an actionable plan. You need to use data to inform where you're going to go with your tech stack investments. So Lynn, I would love your perspectives on like how you're kind of establishing that. So how are you setting a framework for future innovation? How are you thinking about improving upon your tech stack? And if there are any challenges or areas you need to be thinking about as you kind of move forward with your future strategies?
Gosh, that's such a big question for us and such a focus for us. We are a mature, mid at best size company with a legacy system. So the considerations we have, I feel, are very complicated in that we're working off a legacy system that is the foundation for all of our efforts in understanding the implications of making any adjustments and where we can. So honestly, we have been at a stage where we're having those conversations as to understanding, mapping out what it is, how we use, what we use, and then what are our options so that we can run in parallel without doing any harm. So I'm actually very open to and looking for any real advice as to others who might be working through this themselves.
Great. Yes, maybe we look to you to close this conversation out because, again, you work with so many different companies. You've seen the data, you've seen the evolution of so many organizations. Any closing tips or thoughts around how our attendees and even our panelists can tackle this?
Super. So, I think basically having a data-driven approach to change is usually a good way. So, again, you have the North Star, break it down to smaller targets and build that roadmap where you have opportunities to set it and test it, as we say on this slide, so you can realize value. So the value doesn't come 24 months ahead or 12 months ahead. You can perhaps realize value in a month or 2 months or 3 months. And that would be the stepping stone to the next initiative or the next stream to build your tech stack for improved consumer experience. So, and it could also be that you already have a lot of hidden opportunities with current technologies that you might just be missing out on. So, or adding some simple technology on top of what you already have could open up a lot of new opportunities. So this is exciting, but you need to measure and show results. Then you will get the excitement and investment needed to take the next step. So
amazing. Thank you so much, Jens. And thank you to the rest of the panel. I feel like we could have gone on and on for a few more hours, but I know you guys have a few more sessions lined up. Do want to call out if folks want to dig deeper into these 4 areas that we discussed, even dig into a few more examples. The QR code brings you to the white paper that our teams collaborated on, Retail Touchpoints and Amarsis, on helping provide a framework for tackling all of these issues, and a few more resources as well if you want to assess your strategy, and of course, dig into some of the tactical, tech investments and areas that we discussed during this conversation. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Alicia, and thank you to our fantastic panel. I think that was a really interesting and insightful conversation, and the only shame is that we had to bring it to a close. if you have any questions for our fabulous panelists that you weren't able to get a chance to ask, there's some contact details on the screen ahead. I think, Alicia wrapped it up really well, but I think one of the things I took away from this is, marketing, we understand consumers. We do need our CIOs who really do understand tech and help us to drive that CX innovation together. And if we do work together, then we can craft visions and tactics that build out world-class CX, which neither of us are actually able to do on our own. So that's some of the things I'm going to take away from this session.